Billionaire CEO caught his maid's daughter washing dishes at dawn and discovered her secret. Before the story begins, tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching? And at the end, do not forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The $3,000 Persian rug was not guilty of anything, but Sophie Hart seriously considered having a word with it. You? She pointed a trembling finger at the innocent fabric stretched across the kitchen floor. Were created by the universe just to test me, weren't you? 3 in the morning. Montclair Mansion drowned in absolute silence. Lights off. No one home. At least that's what Sophie was sure of when she unlocked the back door with her mother's spare key. Wrong. But she would only find that out when it was already too late. Sophie was carrying a stack of plates that challenged the laws of physics and common sense. At least 15 porcelain plates balanced in her arms, held together with the precision of an amateur juggler seconds away from a spectacular failure. "It's fine," she whispered to the plates. "We can do this. Just don't breathe too hard." The first plate slipped. Sophie lifted her left elbow. The second plate wobbled. She leaned her right hip. And then the rug attacked. It wasn't a simple stumble. It was a full cinematic slow-motion disaster. Her foot met the curled edge of the Persian rug with the precision of a guided missile. Her ankle twisted, her knee folded, her arms flung open in panic, and the 15 plates did exactly what plates do when abandoned mid-air. They dropped. Crash! The sound echoed through the entire mansion like a crystal explosion inside an empty cathedral. Sophie was on the floor, face down, arms spread, cheek pressed to the cold marble, surrounded by expensive porcelain shards scattered in a 3-meter radius. "Perfect," she murmured against the floor. Simply perfect. For a full 5 seconds, she did not move. Maybe if she stayed still, the universe would forget she existed. Maybe the floor would open and swallow her. Maybe. "Sorry, rug," she whispered. "I shouldn't have yelled at you. You were just there. It's my fault." Silence. Sophie sighed, pushed her hands against the floor, and started to get up. Her back hurt. Her knees burned. And now she had at least 40 minutes of cleaning ahead before she could finish the tasks her mother hadn't been able to complete. 40 minutes she did not have, because in 3 hours she had to be at the cafe for the morning shift. Then she would rush to the tutoring class she paid out of her own pocket, and then she would come back here again after sunset to do it all over. But it was fine. It had to be fine. As long as her mother didn't lose her job, as long as they didn't lose their little house, as long as no one found out. Sophie dragged herself to the sink and turned on the faucet. The water burst out with exaggerated pressure, splashing straight into her face. Seriously. She spat water and glared at the faucet. "Couldn't we get a break today? Just today?" The faucet answered with another violent jet. Sophie twisted the valve hard. Then again, the water kept pouring wildly, soaking the front of her old t-shirt. "You have a problem," she muttered at the faucet. "A serious self-control problem." That was when she heard it. A breath, not hers. Sophie froze, fingers still gripping the rebellious faucet, water dripping from her chin, heart pounding. Slowly, very slowly, she turned her head and saw him. Cole Montclair was standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, shoulder leaning on the frame, expression unreadable. He wore gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt, his dark hair slightly messy as if he had just gotten out of bed. And he was looking directly at her. Not just looking, watching, witnessing, seeing everything. Sophie's blood froze, boiled, and froze again in under 2 seconds. She wanted to speak, to explain, to disappear. But no words came out. Because one question burned in her throat, obvious and devastating. How long had he been standing there? Cole didn't say anything. He just kept looking. His dark eyes took in the scene, the broken shards, the rolled rug, the faucet spraying, Sophie soaked and unmoving. And then the corner of his mouth curved. Almost nothing, but enough. A nearly invisible smile. Sophie felt her face burst into flames. Impossible. Unfair. She had come here in secret. No one was supposed to be home. No one was supposed to see, and especially not him. Sophie finally found her voice, but it came out tight and high. "I can explain." Cole tilted his head slightly, still silent, just waiting. Sophie opened her mouth, closed it, opened again. "The rug," she pointed accusingly at the innocent fabric, "attacked me." Absolute silence. And then Cole Montclair did something Sophie never imagined she would see. He laughed. It wasn't a full laugh. It was a low, restrained, almost reluctant sound. But it was there. Real. Undeniable. And somehow, that was worse than if he had yelled. Because now Sophie Hart, the invisible maid's daughter, the student who gave up her dreams, the woman who talked to objects at 3 in the morning, was being seen. Truly seen. And the billionaire CEO who witnessed the entire disaster couldn't stop looking at her. The faucet kept running. The shards glimmered under the moonlight, and the silent question hung in the air between them, heavy and unavoidable. What happens now? Sophie needed a plan. A brilliant plan. Convincing. Something that explained why she was in the mansion at 3 in the morning, soaked, surrounded by pieces of expensive porcelain, clearly losing an argument with inanimate objects. The problem was that her brain had completely shut down. So, Cole Montclair broke the silence, his voice low and far too calm for someone who had just witnessed a complete disaster. Do you break into houses often, or was today a special occasion? Sophie felt the blood rush to her face. No. Worse, she felt it boil, evaporate, and probably leave in the form of smoke through her ears. I didn't break in. Her voice came out 3 octaves higher than normal. I have a tea. Cole raised one eyebrow. Just one, but it was devastating. You have a tea? I do. To my house, technically. Sophie swallowed hard. It's my mother's. The key. She works here. She's the maid. 2 years. Great employee. Never broke anything. She looked at the shards spread across the floor. Until I showed up. The silence returned. Heavy. Awkward. The kind that made Sophie want to dig a hole in the ground and live there permanently. Cole crossed his arms and leaned against the doorway. He didn't look angry or scared. Just observing. As if he were putting a puzzle together in his mind and the pieces didn't make sense yet. Your mother, he said slowly, works here during the day. That's right. It's 3 in the morning. I noticed. And you're finishing her job? Sophie opened her mouth, closed it. Panic rose up her throat, because if she confirmed, he would want to know why. And if he knew why, he would find out about her mother's illness. And if he found out about that, her mother would be fired. And they would lose everything. No, Sophie said way too fast. I mean, not exactly. I just forgot something here earlier and came to get it, and then I saw some dishes and thought, well, what harm is there in washing a few dishes? And then the rug, she pointed accusingly at the Persian fabric. Decided today was the day to destroy me emotionally. Cole looked at the rug, looked at Sophie, looked at the shards, and then he did something completely unexpected. He walked into the kitchen. Sophie stepped back instinctively, almost tripping again. But Cole only went to the cabinet, pulled out a broom and a dustpan, and held them out to her. Gravity, he said, his tone absolutely neutral. You insulted gravity a moment ago, Sophie froze. You heard that? I heard you call the faucet uncontrolled too. That was it. There was no going back. Sophie Hart had officially become a private joke to a billionaire CEO. She grabbed the broom with both hands, holding it like a life preserver. I talk to objects when I'm nervous, she murmured, staring at her feet. It's a thing I do. Sorry. You don't need to apologize? Sophie looked up, surprised. Cole had a strange expression on his face. It wasn't pity. It wasn't amusement. It was something between curiosity and concern? No. Impossible. Billionaire CEOs did not worry about maids' daughters who talked to faucets. She knelt down and began sweeping the shards, her hands shaking slightly. Cole didn't move. He just stood there, watching in silence. And then he saw it. Sophie noticed the exact moment his eyes fell on her hands, on the cuts, the scrapes, the calloused palms of someone who worked twice as hard, the short, uneven nails of someone who had no time to take care of herself. She curled her fingers instinctively, trying to hide them. Too late. Do you live here? Cole asked suddenly. The question dropped like a bomb. Sophie looked up too fast, her eyes wide. What? No, of course not. I live far, very far. Another neighborhood, tiny place. But it's mine, I mean ours, mine and my mother's. She was talking way too fast. She knew it, but she couldn't stop. It's a small house, nothing special, but it has a roof and a door and the walls don't fall down most of the time. Cole tilted his head and Sophie realized she had said too much. Again, so you crossed the city, he said slowly, at 3 in the morning, to wash dishes that your mother, an exemplary employee, forgot to wash. When he put it that way, it sounded absolutely ridiculous. Because it was ridiculous. And it was a lie, and he knew it. Sophie could see it in his eyes. Cole Montclair was not foolish. He had put the pieces together. Maybe a few were still missing, but he already saw the overall picture. And that was terrible. Look, Sophie dropped the broom and stood up, her shoulders tense. I know it looks strange, but I promise my mother is a great employee. She never misses work. She is never late. She never leaves anything unfinished. What happened today it was an accident. Mine. Only mine. She does not even know I came. Her voice broke at the end, just a little, but it broke, and Sophie saw the moment Cole noticed. The silence returned, but this time it was different, less uncomfortable, more gentle. Your mother will not lose her job, Cole said, his voice low and steady. Sophie blinked, confused. What? That was what you were worried about, wasn't it? He stepped forward, his hands in his pockets. That I would fire her because of this. Sophie did not answer. She did not need to. The answer was written all over her face. Cole sighed. Your mother has worked here for 2 years, never caused a problem, never complained. She does her work with dedication. He paused. I do not fire good people because of broken dishes. Sophie felt something tighten in her chest. Relief, fear, gratitude, all mixed together. Thank you, she whispered. Cole nodded, and then for the first time he smiled. A small smile. Almost invisible, but real. But maybe, he said in a lighter tone, you should consider making peace with gravity, and with the rug. It seems the three of you need group therapy. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the fear, the complete embarrassment, Sophie let out a laugh. Short, rough, but genuine. I'll add it to the list, she said. Right after learning how to walk without tripping. Cole picked up the broom she had dropped and started helping clean up. Sophie froze for a second, shocked. A billionaire CEO, sweeping broken pieces at 3 in the morning. Because of her. They worked in silence for a few minutes. And then Sophie realized something. He had not asked more questions. He had not pushed. He had not demanded explanations. He had simply let it go. But as Sophie dumped the last pieces into the trash, she saw it from the corner of her eye. Cole watching her injured hands again. Watching the tiredness around her eyes. Watching the poorly told lie she had tried to sell. And Sophie knew, with absolute certainty, he had let it go. But he had not forgotten. Cole Montclair could not stop thinking about the woman who fought with rugs. 3 days had passed since the early morning incident. 3 days of important meetings, million-dollar decisions, and presentations that would define the company's future. And all he could think was, why was she so frightened? It made no sense. Broken dishes were not the end of the world. Her mother would not be fired because of a few plates. He had made that clear. But the panic in Sophie's eyes had been real, deep, the kind of fear that came from something much bigger than expensive porcelain. Cole turned his leather chair and looked out the office window. Down below, the city was moving fast. Cars, people, lives happening at full speed, and he still could not stop thinking about her injured hands. Mr. Montclair? Cole turned. His assistant, Martin, stood in the doorway with a folder in hand and the kind of expression that said, You asked for information and I brought it, but I'm not sure you will like what you read. Come in, Cole said. Martin closed the door behind him and set the folder on the desk. It was thin, discreet, the kind of document that should not officially exist. You asked for Sophie Hart's background, Martin said, adjusting his glasses. Daughter of Claire Hart, household employee. Cole opened the folder and froze, because the first thing he saw was a photo. Sophie, smiling, bright eyes, holding an academic honor certificate. She looked different, younger, lighter, as if the world had not yet fallen on her shoulders. Graduated in environmental engineering, Martin continued, pointing at the next document. State University, excellent grades, top 5 in her class, final project on water sustainability in low-income communities. Cole turned the page. More certificates, awards, honors. Sophie Hart was not only good, she was outstanding. So what happened, he asked, already knowing he was not going to like the answer. Martin sighed. Absences began to pile up during the second semester of last year. Grades started to drop, assignments delivered late, and then, he paused, she withdrew from the program, 6 months ago, with only 1 semester left. Cole closed his eyes. 6 months. She'd been so close. Go on. Martin pulled another document. She works in 2 places, a downtown cafe, morning shift, a convenience store, night shift, minimum wage at both. He paused, and apparently, she comes to the mansion in the middle of the night to finish her mother's tasks. Why? I'm not sure yet. But Martin slid one last sheet across the table, a medical report. Claire Hart. Diagnosis: progressive autoimmune disease. Ongoing treatment required. Stable prognosis with proper medication. Estimated monthly cost, $3,000. Cole felt something tighten in his chest. $3,000. For him, it was the price of the rug Sophie had tripped over. For her, it was the difference between her mother living or dying. There's more, Martin said, and for the first time his voice had a hint of amusement. The cafe supervisor left some notes about her in the HR system. Cole lifted an eyebrow. What kind of notes? Martin cleared his throat and read directly from the tablet. Dedicated employee, but peculiar. Often seen talking to kitchen utensils. Last week, she apologized out loud to a cup she dropped. Yesterday, she was seen negotiating with the coffee grinder to cooperate today because she was tired. Customers think it's funny. Management finds it concerning. Even with everything going on, Cole felt the corner of his mouth twitch. Of course she did that at work too. There's more, Martin continued, trying not to smile. Convenience store supervisor. Excellent with customers, on time, reliable, but insists the soda machine has its own opinions and needs to be convinced to work gently. Cole ran a hand over his face. He could picture it clearly. Sophie Hart, exhausted, with 2 jobs and a sick mother, still finding the energy to treat objects like confidants. It wasn't madness. It was survival. When you had no one to talk to, you talked to whatever was there. Anything else? Cole asked, his voice softer now. Martin hesitated. There's one detail. Small, but interesting. He slid an old photo across the table. Black and white. 2 men in humanitarian mission uniforms. Cole recognized one immediately, his father. The other? James Hart, Martin said. Sophie's worked with your father on 3 international missions. Saved his life twice. Cole picked up the photo carefully, as if it could break. He knew that story. Vaguely. His father mentioned it sometimes before he passed. A courageous man. A true friend, someone who never asked for recognition. Her grandfather, Cole murmured. He passed away 5 years ago, Martin added. Left Claire and Sophie, no insurance, no savings, only pride and stories of a good man. Cole set the photo back on the table and stayed silent, the pieces finally falling into place. Sophie wasn't entering the mansion out of bad intentions. She wasn't lying for convenience. She was carrying the whole world on her shoulders. Alone. Quietly, with too much pride to ask for help. And now he knew. She didn't need charity. She needed justice. Is that all? Cole asked, closing the folder. Yes, sir. Martin paused. May I ask? What do you plan to do? Cole stayed silent a long moment, looked at his father's photo, looked at the medical report, looked at the certificates of a brilliant woman who had to abandon everything, and finally understood what had been bothering him since that night. Sophie Hart didn't trip because she was clumsy. She tripped because she was carrying too much weight, and no one had noticed. Until now. Cole stood and walked to the window, his hands in his pockets. I don't know yet, he said, steady, but it needs to be discreet. She has pride. She won't accept direct help. Understood. And Martin? Yes, sir? Cole turned, his dark eyes fixed on the assistant. Find everything about her mother's medication. Suppliers. Costs. Options. I want to know if there's any way to ease access. Martin nodded and left the office quietly. Cole stayed alone. The city below was still moving. Lives going on. But something had shifted, because now he knew the truth. And the truth was unacceptable. Sophie Hart had sacrificed her own future to save her mother, had given up her dreams to pay for medicine, had worked herself to exhaustion just to keep a roof over their heads. And no one had noticed. Cole looked at the folder on the table, at the photo of the young woman smiling with her certificate, at the report showing exactly when everything began to fall apart. 6 months ago. 6 months of silence. 6 months of invisible struggle. But now someone had seen. And Cole, not Claire, wasn't the kind of man who saw injustice and walked away. Especially when the injustice had a name, and talked to faucets at 3 in the morning. Sophie had a plan. A perfect plan. Brilliant, completely disaster-proof. She was going to walk into the mansion. Do the job. Leave quietly. No noise. No chaos. No running into Cole Montclair again, and having to explain why she seemed like a magnet for domestic catastrophes. The plan lasted exactly 7 minutes. You, Sophie whispered to the vacuum cleaner, need to work with me today. Please. I am begging you. 10 at night. The mansion was empty again, or at least that was what Sophie hoped with every bit of strength she had. Because if she had to face that man a third time, she would simply throw herself into the decorative garden lake and pretend to be a statue. The vacuum did not answer, obviously, because it was an inanimate object with no ability to communicate. But Sophie swore it had a defiant expression. She pressed the power button. Nothing. Pressed it again. Silence. No, she warned, pointing her finger. Do not do this to me. We are a team. Remember? You and I against the dirt. She tried a third time. The vacuum let out a sharp, violent roar, as if it were possessed, and shot forward with enough force to pull the cord from her hand. Hey! Sophie shouted, running after it. Come back here. The vacuum had a life of its own. It zigzagged through the living room, hit the sofa, bounced off the coffee table, and went straight toward the bookshelf filled with rare books that probably cost more than her entire house. Sophie dove. She literally dove. Arms stretched out, body in the air. A slow-motion, cinematic action movie dive. She grabbed the vacuum at the last second, rolled on the floor, and hit her back against the wall with a dull thud. Victory. She had saved the rare books. The vacuum turned off by itself, as if satisfied with the chaos it had caused. Sophie stayed on the floor for 5 full seconds, staring at the ceiling, questioning every life choice that had brought her to that moment. You, she panted at the vacuum, are evil. Pure evil. Silence. Sophie stood up slowly, her back aching, and checked the bookshelf. Books intact. Thank heavens. She let out a relieved breath and turned to pick up the rebellious vacuum, and stepped on the cord. Her foot slipped, her ankle twisted, and Sophie Hart, in all her clumsy glory, fell to the side and took the entire bookshelf down with her. Crash! Books, dozens of books, falling like dominoes, spreading across the floor in a chaotic literary avalanche. Sophie was in the middle of the pile, arms open, eyes wide, a copy of Pride and Prejudice balanced on her head. Perfect, she murmured. Simply perfect. For a moment, only silence. And then she heard it. Footsteps, coming down the stairs, slow, deliberate. No, 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 no. Sophie tried to stand up, fast, but she was stuck under a biography of Churchill and an encyclopedia of Renaissance art. Sorry, she whispered to the books, pushing them. Sorry, please let me out. The footsteps came closer. Sophie froze, and then he appeared. Cole Montclair, in pajamas, hair messy, the expression of someone who had just been woken by a literary explosion downstairs. His eyes found Sophie, sitting on the floor, surrounded by books, with Pride and Prejudice still balanced on her head. The silence stretched, tense, heavy, and then Cole spoke, his voice dangerously calm. You? Again. Sophie felt her face catch fire. It was not possible. It simply was not possible. She had been so careful, so discreet. The book slid off her head and fell into her lap with a pathetic thump. I can explain, Sophie said, her voice coming out higher than she intended. Cole crossed his arms, waiting. Sophie looked at the fallen vacuum, looked at the scattered books, looked at her own trembling hands. The vacuum, she began. The vacuum, Cole repeated, his tone completely neutral. It attacked me. A pause. The vacuum attacked you. Yes, Sophie waved her hands wildly. I swear, I turned it on and it just rushed off like an out-of-control mechanical bull, and I had to dive to save the books, and then I stepped on the cord and the bookshelf decided it also wanted to take part in my public humiliation. She took a deep breath, realizing she had said everything in one single sentence. Cole did not say anything. He only looked at her. And then his eyes moved. Slowly. Scanning the room. The vacuum on its side. The fallen bookshelf. The books forming a perfect circle around Sophie as if she were the epicenter of a literary earthquake. And then he did something Sophie did not expect. He laughed. It was not a polite laugh. It was not restrained. It was a genuine, deep laugh that he tried to hide behind his hand but failed completely. Sophie did not know whether to be offended or relieved. It is not funny, she murmured, but her own voice was failing. You, Cole tried to regain his composure but was still laughing. You just told me you were attacked by a vacuum cleaner. I was. And that the bookshelf joined the conspiracy. Exactly. He shook his head, still smiling. Sophie, it was the first time he said her name, and something strange happened in her chest when she heard it. This is not normal. I know it's not normal, she burst out, finally managing to get up. Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I wake up every day thinking, today I'm going to argue with inanimate objects? No, but apparently the universe decided I'm the official clown of Montclair Mansion. Her voice broke at the end, and Sophie felt it. The weight, the exhaustion, the absolute shame of being there, again, witnessing another disaster of her own making. She lowered her head, her hands trembling. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll clean everything, I promise, and then I'll never come back again. I mean it. Cole stopped laughing, the silence returned, but it was different now, heavier, real. Why are you here, Sophie? The question was gentle, calm, but it hit like a punch. Sophie couldn't look at him. You know why. Your mother. She nodded, eyes burning, throat tight. She can't finish everything by herself, Sophie whispered. And if she doesn't finish, you'll realize she's sick, and if you realize that, you'll fire her. And if you fire her, we'll lose the health plan, and the medicine, and the house, and… Her voice broke completely. Sophie closed her eyes, breathing deeply, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. I'm sorry, she repeated. I know it's pathetic. I know I shouldn't be here. I know. Sophie. She opened her eyes. Cole had moved closer. He was only 2 steps away, and the expression on his face wasn't pity, it was understanding. You're not pathetic, he said, steady. You're exhausted. And somehow that was worse, because pity she could ignore. But kindness? Kindness broke defenses. Sophie wiped her eyes quickly with the back of her hand. I'll clean, she repeated in a rough voice, and then I'll leave. I won't bother you again. Cole sighed. You're not bothering anyone. Yes, I am. Look at this mess. The mansion has seen worse. I doubt it. He smiled a little. My brother knocked over a 2-meter marble statue when he was 12. Your books are nothing. Despite everything, Sophie felt a small smile escape. They stayed quiet for a moment. Then Cole crouched down and started picking up the books. Sophie blinked, shocked. You don't have to. I know. Really, I can do it alone. Sophie, he looked at her. Accept the help. And there was something in his voice, something that made Sophie stop arguing. They worked in silence, picking up books, straightening the shelf, putting away the evil vacuum. And when they finished, Cole turned to her. Do you work tomorrow? Sophie blinked, confused by the change of subject. Yes, coffee shop, morning shift. He nodded, as if filing the information away. Then go home, get some rest. Sophie hesitated. She wanted to ask what he was thinking. She wanted to know why he wasn't angry. She wanted to understand why he kept helping her. But she didn't ask. She just nodded and walked toward the door. And when she looked back, Cole was still there. Watching. Always watching. Sophie had 3 simple rules to survive a coffee shop shift. 1. Smile at all customers, even the unbearable ones. 2. Don't drop anything, especially nothing hot or expensive or both. 3. Avoid Manager Rick when he was in a bad mood. Today, she broke all 3 rules before 9 in the morning. I'm sorry, Sophie whispered to the espresso cup that had just slipped from her tray and shattered on the floor. It wasn't personal. You were a beautiful cup. Heart. Rick's voice cut across the coffee shop like a police siren. Sophie closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then slowly turned around. Rick was behind the counter, his face red, the veins in his neck bulging. He was in his mid-40s, had a beer belly, and an impressive talent for turning any human mistake into a Shakespearean tragedy. That's the 3rd cup today, he growled, pointing at the shards on the floor. The 3rd. I know, Sophie hurried to say, grabbing the broom and dustpan. It was an accident. The tray was slippery and… There's always an excuse with you, isn't there? Customers were starting to stare. Sophie felt her face heat up. That kind of attention that makes you want to shrink until you disappear. It's not an excuse, she said softly, sweeping the pieces. I'll pay for the cup. You'll pay? Rick let out a humorless laugh. With what money? You earn minimum wage. 3 cups cover half your shift. Sophie bit her lip. He was right. Mathematically and cruelly right. Then I'll work more, she answered, keeping her voice steady. I'll stay after my shift, unpaid. Ah, you stay? Rick crossed his arms. Like that time you stayed and left the coffee maker on all night? That was an accident. Or that time you locked the back door and the night shift had to break it open? Sophie tightened her grip on the broom handle. Her hands were shaking. Rick, she tried, her voice low. I'm doing my best. Your best? He let out another bitter laugh. Your best is a joke, Hart. You drop more things than you serve. You talk to yourself all the time. The customers think you're out of your mind. The words hit like slaps. Sophie felt something break in her chest. Small, but painful. Because he was right. She was clumsy. She did talk to objects. She wasn't an ideal employee, but she was trying. Every day. With every bit of energy she had. She was trying. I'm sorry, Sophie whispered, staring at her own feet. I'll try to do better. You always say that. Rick pointed toward the back door. Go back there. Wash dishes until I decide if you still have a job or not. The silence in the cafe was deafening. Sophie nodded, picked up the dustpan full of shards, and walked toward the back, feeling every pair of eyes glued to her. Pathetic. That's what she was. Pathetic. She pushed the kitchen door open and set the dustpan in the sink. Her hands were shaking so much she had to brace them on the counter. Don't cry. Don't cry. Don't cry. Sophie looked at the faucet. You, she whispered, her voice tight, at least you don't judge me, right? The faucet didn't answer. Obviously. But somehow, talking to it helped. Sophie turned the water on and started washing the mountain of dishes. Plates, cups, glasses, every movement mechanical, automatic. And then she heard voices outside, muffled, but clear enough. She's always been a little strange. Yeah, but man, Rick went too far today. Not at all. She's a walking disaster. If it were me, I would have fired her long ago. Sophie closed her eyes. Breathe. Just breathe. But the voice in her head screamed. They're right. You are a disaster. You can't do anything right. She squeezed the sponge hard, scrubbed the plate, and then the plate slipped, fell into the sink, broke in half. Sophie stood there staring at the shards, and something inside her cracked. I'm sorry, she whispered to the broken plate, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I never mean to. I just wanted to do one thing right. Once. Just once. The tears came before she could stop them, silent, hot, running down her face as she tried desperately not to make a sound. Because if Rick heard, if anyone saw Sophie, she froze. That voice. No. Sophie wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand and turned around. Cole Montclair was standing in the kitchen doorway. Dark suit, perfect tie, completely out of place in the simple cafe, and looking directly at her. His eyes went straight to her face, to her wet cheeks, to her trembling hands. Sophie wanted to disappear, evaporate, stop existing. What are you doing here? She managed to ask, her voice rough. Cole didn't answer right away. He just kept looking, as if he were deciding something, and then he spoke, low and controlled. I heard everything. Sophie's blood froze. Everything? Everything. He had heard Rick yelling at her. He had heard the staff laughing. He had seen the complete humiliation. Sophie felt a new wave of shame. She tried. It's nothing. Just a bad day. Sophie, Cole took a step forward. That man humiliated you in front of everyone. He's my boss. He can't, Cole cut in, his voice harder now. No one can treat you like that. Sophie let out a bitter laugh. You don't understand. I need this job. I can't. You don't need this job, Cole said, firm. You deserve a job that treats you with respect. Respect doesn't pay bills. The outburst came out louder than she meant. She covered her mouth with her hand, shocked at herself. But Cole didn't step back. He didn't get angry. He just waited. And then Sophie broke. I don't have a choice, she whispered. I need 2 jobs to pay for my mother's medicine. I need to finish her tasks in the middle of the night because she's too sick to do them alone. I need to handle Rick humiliating me because I don't have an option. The words poured out, and Sophie couldn't stop. You think I want to talk to faucets? You think I like being everyone's joke? I'm exhausted. I'm breaking, and I don't know what else to do. Silence. Sophie covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking, and then she felt it, a hand, on her shoulder. Gentle. Firm. Cole, you're not alone, he said softly. Sophie lowered her hands, her eyes wide. What? You don't have to carry everything by yourself. Sophie. Cole looked at her, and there was something different in his eyes. Determination. Walk out of this kitchen with me. What? No, I can't. Rick will. I'm not asking, he said. I'm getting you out of here. But now. And there was something in his voice. Something that did not accept discussion. Cole turned and walked back to the front area. Sophie hesitated for only a second. And then she followed him. When they reached the counter, Rick was serving coffee, complaining about something to another employee. Rick, Cole called. The manager turned, annoyed. But when he saw Cole, expensive suit, confident posture, presence that screamed money, his expression changed. "How can I help you, sir?" "You can." Cole took out his wallet. "How much is the loss for the cups she broke today?" Rick blinked, confused. $40? Cole placed a $100 bill on the counter. "Here, and another 60 as a tip for her patience in dealing with you." The silence in the cafe was absolute. Rick turned red. "Look here, sir. I'm not finished," Cole interrupted, his voice dangerously calm. "Sophie Hart does not work here anymore. Consider this her resignation, voluntary, immediate." Sophie's eyes widened. "Cole? No." But he was already guiding her out, his hand firm on her back, determined, and as the cafe door closed behind them, Sophie heard it. The shocked silence. Then applause. 2 customers. Then 3. Then half the cafe clapping. And Sophie, despite the tears, despite the shock, despite everything, smiled. Sophie was having an existential meltdown on the sidewalk. "I don't have a job anymore," she whispered, her hands in her hair. "I don't have a job anymore. How am I going to pay? How am I going to—" "Breathe," Cole said beside her, completely calm, as if he had not just blown up her professional life in 60 seconds. "Breathe?" Sophie turned to him, her eyes wide. "You just made me lose my job. I need that money. You needed dignity." He interrupted, his voice firm. "And in that place, you did not have it." Sophie opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, because he was right, and that was even more frustrating. "Come on." Cole motioned toward the parking lot. "I'll drive you home." "You don't need to. I'll take the bus." "Sophie, really? Get in the car." It wasn't a request, it was almost an order, but said in such a steady way that Sophie's brain simply obeyed before she could process it. They walked in silence to a black Mercedes. Cole unlocked it, opened the passenger door, and waited. Sophie looked at the car, looked at Cole, looked at the car again. "This is a terrible idea," she murmured. "Probably," he agreed. "Get in, anyway." Sophie sighed and got in. The interior smelled like leather and something she could only describe as financial success. There were more buttons on the dashboard than in an airplane cockpit. The seat was so comfortable that Sophie felt guilty just sitting there. Cole got in on the driver's side, started the car, and nothing happened. Sophie looked at the seatbelt hanging beside her. "Okay," she whispered to it. "We need to work together here. Please, I'm having a bad day, and you seem like a reasonable belt. Help me out." She pulled the belt. It locked. "Really?" Sophie pulled again. "Not now, please, not now." The belt stayed locked. "You," she muttered softly, are doing this on purpose, aren't you? It's a conspiracy. First the rug, then the vacuum, now you." Cole was watching her. Sophie could feel it. She turned her head slowly and met his eyes. He had a strange expression on his face, as if he were trying very, very hard not to laugh. "I can explain," Sophie said quickly. "Please," Cole replied, and there was a hint of amusement in his voice. "Explain." Sophie let go of the belt, which immediately unlocked. "Have problems with objects. We do not get along. It's like fundamental incompatibility with the physical universe." Cole said nothing. He simply kept looking at her with that almost smile that was extremely irritating. Sophie pulled the belt again. This time it came smoothly, perfect, as if it had never locked. "See?" she murmured to the belt. "When you want, you can do it." She clicked the belt in place and looked forward, her cheeks burning. "You can laugh," she said, her voice low. "I know you want to." Cole started the car. "I'm not laughing." "You are. Inside. I can feel it." And then he did. Not a loud laugh, but a real, low laugh that filled the whole car. Sophie covered her face with her hands. "I'm a disaster," she groaned. "A walking disaster. Talker of objects. Completely dysfunctional." "You are funny," Cole corrected, driving out of the parking lot. "I'm not funny. I'm pathetic." "Sophie?" Something in his tone made her lower her hands and look. Cole's eyes were on the road, but his expression was serious now. "You are not pathetic," he said. "You are human, tired, overwhelmed, but not pathetic." The words caught Sophie by surprise. She didn't know what to say. They stayed quiet for a few minutes. The car moved smoothly through the streets, so different from the crowded bus Sophie took every day. Then she realized. "Wait," Sophie turned to him. "You don't even know where I live." Cole kept his eyes on the road. "I know." "How?" A pause. Too long. And then Sophie understood. "You investigated?" Cole sighed. "I did." Sophie didn't know if she should feel offended or scared or something else. "Why?" Because you showed up at my house at 3 in the morning washing dishes and talking to faucets, he answered plainly. And I needed to know why. Sophie crossed her arms defensive. And? What did you find out? That I'm poor? That my mother is sick? That I dropped out of college because I couldn't pay for medication and tuition at the same time? I found out, Cole said, voice lower, that you are stronger than anyone should have to be. The air left Sophie's lungs. She didn't expect that. She expected pity, or judgment, or condescension, but not that. I'm not strong, she whispered. I'm falling apart. I know. I lost my job today. You were freed from a job that treated you badly, Cole corrected. I need the money. I know, he repeated, firmer this time. And we will take care of that. Sophie blinked. We? Cole finally looked at her, just for a second, but it was enough. You think I pulled you out of that cafe just to leave you stranded afterward? Sophie didn't know what to say. Why are you doing this? Because, he looked back at the road, someone has to. Silence. Sophie felt something tighten in her throat. I don't want charity, she said, her voice shaking. It's not charity. Then what is it? Cole hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. Your grandfather, he began, worked with my father, humanitarian missions, years ago. Sophie's eyes widened. You knew about my grandfather? I found out, Cole admitted. He saved my father's life twice, and my father never had the chance to repay him. He died before he could. Sophie stayed quiet, processing. So this is a debt? No, Cole shook his head. It's justice. Justice, Sophie repeated softly. You should not be working 2 jobs to pay for medicine, he said. You should not have dropped out of college. You should not be washing dishes in the middle of the night because your mother is too sick to do it herself. His voice was harder now, not angry at her. Angry at the situation. None of this is fair. He continued. And I am in a position to help, so I will. Sophie felt the tears coming back. But this time they were different. Not from shame, not from exhaustion, from relief. She covered her face with her hands, trying not to cry again. Hey, Cole slowed the car, worried. Are you okay? No, Sophie sobbed, half laughing, half crying. I am awful. I am completely destroyed. But she couldn't finish. Cole pulled the car over, gently, no rush, and waited. Waited for Sophie to breathe, waited for her to wipe her tears, waited for her to gather herself again. I'm sorry, Sophie finally said, her voice rough. I'm at my limit. I don't know what I feel anymore. You don't need to know, Cole said. You just need to accept help. Sophie looked at him. Really looked at the man who had seen all her disasters, who had heard her talking to objects, who had watched her break, fall apart, fail, and who still chose to stay. Why are you so kind to me? She whispered. Cole smiled, a small, genuine smile. Because you deserve kindness, he said simply. And because someone who apologizes to broken dishes cannot be a bad person. Despite everything, Sophie laughed, a messy, tearful, but real laugh. I'm ridiculous. You are authentic. Cole corrected. And that is rare. He started driving again, and Sophie looked out the window, trying to make sense of everything. She had lost a job, but gained, what, an ally? A friend? She didn't know. She only knew that for the first time in months, she didn't feel completely alone. And when Cole stopped in front of her little house, small, modest, with a roof that needed fixing, he didn't judge. He only looked at Sophie and said, We're going to take care of this. Sophie nodded. And before getting out of the car, she did something impulsive. She looked at the seatbelt. Thank you for cooperating at the end, she whispered. Cole laughed. Truly. Out loud. And Sophie stepped out of the car smiling, even with everything falling apart, even without knowing what would come next. She was smiling, and somehow that was enough. Sophie stepped out of the car with her heart still racing, hugging her own arms as she walked to the door. Why did I ask if he wanted to come in? The question echoed like a reminder of the chaos she tried to hide even from herself. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was loneliness. Or maybe it was the way Cole looked at her, as if he saw everything she pretended to carry without effort. She took a deep breath, trying to regain control. She who could not convince even a seatbelt to cooperate. She turned to say thank you, end the moment, close the door, and pretend that life was under control. But the words had already slipped out before she even noticed, and now there was no going back. Sophie had a golden rule. Never let anyone see the house when it was a mess. And today, obviously, the house was a mess. You don't need to come in, she said quickly, blocking the door with her body. Really? I can just thank you from here, and you can go and we forget that. Sophie, Cole looked at her. Unless you're hiding a secret collection of rebellious rugs, he interrupted gently, there is nothing that will make me run out. Sophie bit her lip. She seriously considered inventing that. Yes, she did have an entire wall dedicated to objects that hated her. But Cole was already waiting with that irritating patience of his. She sighed and opened the door. The little house was exactly what it looked like from the outside. Small, modest, and trying desperately to stay standing. The living room had a sofa that was once beige but now was beige with history. A coffee table with 3 legs and a stack of books acting as the 4th. Floral curtains Sophie's grandmother had sewn decades ago. And clutter, because Sophie had not had time to clean anything in weeks. Sorry about the mess, she murmured, kicking a shoe under the sofa. I wasn't expecting company. Cole walked in slowly, his eyes moving around the space, but there was no judgment in his expression, only observation. Please, Sophie whispered to the sofa as she passed by it, do not creak today. Please, do not creak. The sofa responded with a loud, dramatic creak. Of course. Sophie closed her eyes, mortified. Does it always do that? Cole asked, amusement in his voice. Always, she answered, defeated. It has a sense of theatrical timing. Cole smiled slightly, and then a voice called from the hallway. Sophie, you're home early. Sophie froze. No. She had planned to walk in, make up an excuse, walk out again, and deal with everything later. But now her mother was awake, and Cole was here. And, Mom, Sophie called, trying to sound casual, I brought someone. Silence. And then Claire Hart appeared in the bedroom doorway. She was in her early 50s but looked 10 years older. Gray hair pulled into a loose bun, deep dark circles under her eyes. Her hands shaking slightly as she held onto the doorframe. But there was dignity in her, in the way she kept her shoulders straight, in the way she lifted her chin even when exhausted. Her eyes went straight to Cole, and then widened. Mr. Montclair, she said, her voice breaking with surprise. What? Sophie, what is happening? Sophie panicked. Pure panic. Nothing is happening. He just gave me a ride, because my bus broke down, and he was driving by chance. Pure coincidence. Claire narrowed her eyes. Mothers had a built-in lie detector. Sophie Hart, she said, in the tone that meant, do not lie to me. Fine, Sophie burst out. I got fired from the cafe, but it wasn't my fault. Rick was being awful, and Mr. Montclair was there, and he sort of rescued me, and now he's here, and I don't know what's going on, and… Breathe, Cole interrupted gently. Sophie breathed. Claire looked between the two of them, processing, and then sighed. Come in, Mr. Montclair. She's sorry about the house. It is not presentable. The house is perfect, Cole replied, and he sounded sincere. Claire nodded and walked slowly to the sofa. Each step was careful, measured, as if it hurt, and it did. Sophie knew it hurt. She hurried to help her mother sit, but Claire made that small gesture with her hand that meant I can do it myself, even when she clearly could not. Pride, Hart family pride, the kind that could break a person. Cole sat in the chair across from her. Sophie stayed standing, nervous, wondering if she should offer coffee or water or simply escape through the window. Mr. Montclair, Claire began, her hands clasped in her lap. I do not know what Sophie told you, but… She did not tell me anything, Cole interrupted gently. I figured it out on my own. Claire went silent, her eyes filled with tears she fought to hold back. I can explain, she began, her voice trembling. I have been a very good employee. I never missed a day. Never. I know, Cole said. You are one of the best employees I have. Then why? I am not here to fire you. The silence dropped like a bomb. Claire blinked, confused. You're not? No. Then, why not? Cole looked at Sophie, then back at Claire. Because I found out that you're sick, he said, direct but gentle, and that Sophie has been working twice as much to cover for you, and that both of you have been wearing yourselves out in silence to keep everything running. The tears Claire had been holding finally fell. I didn't want anyone to know, she whispered. I didn't want to lose my job. I didn't want. And then it happened. Claire tried to stand, probably to get tissues, or water, or simply to leave the room because vulnerability was unbearable for her. But her legs didn't hold. She stumbled. Mom, Sophie lunged, catching her before she fell. Cole stood too, but Sophie was already there, helping her mother back to the couch. "It's fine," Claire panted. "It's fine. Just a little dizziness." "It's not fine." Sophie burst out, her voice breaking. "You're not fine. And you keep pretending you are, and I don't know what else to do." The words came out like a flood. "I work 2 jobs. I go to the mansion in the middle of the night. I stopped college, and it's still not enough. I can't pay for your medicine and the rent and the food and—" Sophie stopped, breathing hard, hands shaking. "I can't do it," she whispered. "I can't handle this, Mom. I'm trying, but I can't." Claire pulled Sophie into a tight hug, and the two of them cried, right there, in front of Cole and Claire. No hiding, no pride, just exhausted. Cole stayed quiet, watching, and Sophie could see it on his face. He finally understood, not through reports, not through investigations, by seeing it with his own eyes, the fragility, the effort, the silent fight. After a long moment, Claire gently pulled away and wiped her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mr. Montclair," she said, trying to compose herself. "This is inappropriate." "It's not," Cole answered, firm. "It's human." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Claire, Sophie." He looked at both of them. "I need you to listen to me. Without pride, without fear. Just listen." They nodded. "I'm going to help," he said, "with the medicine, with the doctors, with whatever is needed." "Mr. Montclair," Claire began. "It's not charity," he interrupted. "Your father, Claire, James Hart, he worked with my father. He saved his life, and my father never managed to repay that. He died with that debt." Claire widened her eyes. You knew my father?" "I found out," Cole confirmed, "and I found out he was a good man. Someone who helped without expecting anything in return. Someone who raised a daughter with the same values." He paused. "And I'm not going to let this family fall apart when I can stop it." Sophie felt something break in her chest, but it didn't hurt. It felt like relief. Claire covered her mouth with her hand, crying softly. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Cole replied simply. "Accept the help, and let your daughter go back to living her life." Sophie looked at her mother, and Claire looked back at her. And for the first time in months, Sophie saw something different in her mother's eyes. Hope. "Okay," Claire whispered. "Okay." Cole nodded. "I'll take care of everything. Better doctors, proper medication." "And Sophie," he looked at her. "You're going back to college." Sophie tried. "I don't know if—" "You will," he insisted. "You're 6 months away from graduating. You're not giving up now." Sophie felt the tears return. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to thank you." Cole smiled, small, genuine. "You can start," he said, "by making peace with the couch. It seems to have a serious complaint against you." Despite everything, Sophie laughed, and Claire did too, and the couch, as if it had heard them, let out one last dramatic creak. "See?" Sophie said. "It's theatrical." And for the first time in a long time, the tiny house with its creaky sofa and old curtains felt like home. Not perfect, but safe. And that now was enough. Cole couldn't sleep. 3 in the morning. Again. It felt like this hour had become the official meeting point between him and revelations about the Hart family. He was in his father's office, not the corporate one, the personal one. The one on the 2nd floor of the mansion that he had avoided since his father passed away. But tonight, he needed to be there. Because something didn't add up. James Hart. The name had appeared in the files. Sophie's grandfather. A veteran. A humanitarian worker. A good man. But there was more. Cole felt it. Something deeper his father had never fully explained. He opened the drawer of old correspondence. Letters his father had kept, some dated decades back. And then he saw it. A small wooden box with the initials JH carved on the lid. Cole lifted it carefully, opened it, and froze. Letters. Dozens of them, all addressed to his father, all signed by James Hart. Cole picked up the first one. The handwriting was firm, steady, the kind that came from someone used to writing in difficult conditions. "Michael, we arrived safely. The camp is worse than we imagined, but we always knew it would be. You asked me to stay close. I will. Always. James." Cole moved on to the next letter, and the next, and the next. Each one documented a mission, a challenge, a small victory, a big loss, and then he found it. The letter. "Michael, I don't know if you're going to read this. The doctor said you're still unconscious, but I need to write anyway. You almost died today. The explosion hit you directly. I carried you for 3 kilometers to the medical post. You were bleeding so much I thought I would lose you on the way. But you held on. You always hold on. When you wake up, you'll try to thank me. Don't do that. You would have done the same for me. In fact, you did the same for me 6 months ago. We don't keep score, remember? We just keep each other alive. Come back soon, brother. James. Cole stopped breathing. Brother. Not colleague, not partner, brother. He picked up another letter. More recent. Years after the missions. Michael, you asked me to accept the money. I won't. You know why? It wasn't about money. It never was. It was about doing the right thing. You would have died in that field. I could not let that happen. Keep the money. Use it for something good. Build something that matters. I already have everything I need. My daughter Claire and my granddaughter Sophie. They are my legacy, my victory. Take care of your family, Michael. I'll take care of mine. James. Cole felt something tighten in his throat. His father had tried to pay, had offered money, help, anything. And James' heart had refused, because for him, it wasn't a transaction, it was love. Cole put the letter back in the box with trembling hands, and then he saw something at the bottom. A photo. Black and white, worn on the edges. 2 men, dirty uniforms, tired smiles, arms around each other's shoulders. Michael Montclair and James Hart, brothers by choice. Cole turned the photo over. On the back, in his father's handwriting, the man who saved me, the brother I could never repay. May God bless James Hart and his family. Cole closed his eyes and finally understood. It wasn't charity, it wasn't pity, it was legacy. It was what his father would have done if he were still alive. And now it was Cole's responsibility to finish what his father started. The next morning, Martin walked into Cole's office and stopped at the door, eyes wide. Sir, what happened here? Cole was surrounded by papers, documents, letters, and, more concerning, an entire wall covered in colorful post-its. I'm organizing, Cole said without looking up. With post-its? It's efficient. Martin stepped closer and read a few of the post-its out loud. List of objects that try to destroy Sophie. He looked at Cole, confused. Sir, it's a real list, Cole explained, completely serious. Persian rug, vacuum cleaner, seatbelt, creaky sofa. She has a complicated relationship with physical objects. Martin blinked. You made a list of her disputes with objects? I did, for context. Context. Exactly. Cole pointed at another post-it. This one is the timeline of her mother's illness. This is her academic record. These are the estimated monthly expenses. And this, he paused, looking at a purple post-it in the center of the wall, is about her grandfather. Martin followed his gaze and read, James Hart, hero, my father's brother, unpaid debt. He turned to Cole. Sir, is this personal? It is, Cole admitted, very personal. Martin was quiet for a moment, then he sighed. What do you need me to do? Cole turned, finally taking his eyes off the wall. I want the best autoimmune specialists in Chicago. I want a full treatment plan for Claire Hart. And I want Sophie's enrollment reactivated at the university. Full scholarship. Retroactive. That will raise questions. I don't care, Cole interrupted. And Martin? Yes? I want this done discreetly. Sophie has pride. If she thinks it's charity, she'll refuse. Martin nodded, writing everything down. Anything else? Cole looked at the old photo on the desk. Michael and James, brothers. Yes, he said softly. I want to create a fund, in James Hart's name, for families of veterans and humanitarian workers who need medical help. Martin stopped writing and looked at Cole. That's beautiful, sir. Cole shook his head. It's not beautiful, it's right. It should have been done years ago. Your father would be proud. Cole picked up the photo and looked at the 2 men smiling. I hope so, he murmured. Martin left the office in silence, leaving Cole alone with the post-its, the letters, and the weight of a legacy that would finally be honored. Cole looked at the wall again, at the absurd list of objects that had something against Sophie Hart. And he smiled, because in the middle of all the pain, all the injustice, all the struggle, there was a woman who talked to faucets, who apologized to broken dishes, who argued with rugs and lost, and who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders with a dignity she did not even realize she had. James Hart had saved Cole's father, and now Cole would honor that by saving James's family. Not because he owed it, but because it was right. And because, Cole realized with surprise, he cared. He truly cared. About Sophie. About Claire. About the small house with the creaking sofa and old curtains. It was not about debt, it was about family. And family, Cole finally understood, was not just about blood. It was about who you chose to protect. even when they talked to vacuum cleaners. Especially when they talked to vacuum cleaners. Cole took a new sticky note and wrote, "Operation, give Sophie Hart the life she deserves," without her noticing it as help. He placed it in the center of the wall, and for the first time in years, he felt he was doing something that truly mattered. Not building an empire, not closing deals, but honoring a good man, and helping his granddaughter stop being attacked by household objects. It was a perfect plan. Now it just needed to work. Sophie was having an existential crisis with the mailbox. "Okay," she whispered, her hands shaking as she held 3 envelopes. "You have a limit for surprises, right? Let's establish that now. A limit, because I cannot handle any more." The mailbox did not answer, but Sophie swore it had an expression of fake innocence. First letter, electric bill, paid, with a paid stamp. Second letter, water bill, paid, also cleared. Third letter, from the university. Sophie tore the envelope open with trembling fingers. "Dear Sophie Hart, we are pleased to inform you that your enrollment has been reactivated with full retroactive scholarship. All financial matters have been resolved. Welcome back. Sincerely, Academic Department." Sophie read it again, and again. Then she looked at the mailbox. What is happening? The mailbox did not respond, but if it could, it would probably say, "Do not blame the messenger." Sophie stormed into the house like a tornado. Claire was in the kitchen, making tea with hands that shook less than they did the week before. Wait, they shook less. "Mom," Sophie placed the letters on the table. "Did you see this?" Claire picked up the papers, read them, and smiled. She smiled. "I saw it, dear. The new doctor also called. He confirmed the appointment for tomorrow. A specialist. 5 stars on Google." Sophie sat heavily in the chair. "Mom, a 5-star doctor, full scholarship, bills paid." She looked at her mother, her eyes wide. "Someone is getting into our life." "It is not intrusion," Claire said gently, stirring the tea. "It is help." "From who?" Claire did not answer, but her silence said everything. "Mom," Sophie stood up. "It is Mr. Montclair, isn't it?" "Sophie, no," she gestured wildly. "He cannot just pay for everything. I did not ask for this. I do not want this." "Why not?" The question fell like a bomb. Sophie opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Because I do not deserve it." "Nonsense," Claire said firmly. "You deserve every good thing the universe can offer." "But I cannot accept charity." "It is not charity." Claire set the cup on the table with more force than she meant to. "It is justice. It is honor. It is about your grandfather, and about doing the right thing." Sophie covered her face with her hands. "I am losing control," she whispered. "Everything is changing too fast. I do not know what to do. I do not know how to deal with this." Claire stood, slowly but more steady than she had been in months, and hugged her daughter. "You do not need to control everything," she whispered. "Sometimes you just need to accept that the universe is on your side." Sophie let out a wet, tight sound of a laugh. "The universe? The same one that throws rugs, vacuum cleaners, and seatbelts at my face? Even the universe has bad days," Claire joked. But Sophie could not truly laugh, because something was wrong, something that did not fit. Why was he doing this? No one did this. No one simply paid for another person's life without expecting anything in return. Unless, Sophie felt her stomach drop, unless he wanted something. 2 days later, Sophie was at the university. Back. After 6 months, the campus looked the same. Trees, buildings, students rushing between classes, but Sophie felt out of place, as if she did not belong anymore. She looked at the door of the environmental engineering department. "Okay," she whispered to the door. "You and I are going to have a serious conversation. If you lock, if you creak, if you do anything to humiliate me, I swear I will take you down and install an automatic door." The door opened smoothly and quietly. Sophie blinked, surprised. "Thank you," she murmured. She walked in and tripped over the threshold. Of course. She dropped to her knees, books everywhere. A pen rolling down the hallway. And of course, people were watching. "Sophie?" A familiar voice called. "Sophie Hart?" Sophie looked up and saw Rachel, her former classmate, running toward her. "Oh my gosh." Rachel helped Sophie stand. "You're back. We thought you had given up." I, not exactly." Sophie gathered her books, her face burning. "I just needed a break." "Well, you picked the perfect time." Rachel smiled. "The final project is coming. Public presentation. Business owners, investors, the press. It's huge." Sophie's stomach twisted. "Public presentation? Yes, in front of everyone. Rachel was practically vibrating with excitement. You're going to do amazing! Sophie forced a smile. A public presentation. Her, the girl who tripped over flat surfaces, who talked to doors, who had a tense relationship with physical objects. Perfect. Just perfect. That night, Sophie was in her room, staring at the pile of old books and notes. 6 months of material she needed to relearn. She picked up the first book, opened it, and a piece of paper fell out. Sophie picked it up and froze. It wasn't her paper, it was a note, handwritten, a man's handwriting. Steady. You can do this. You always could. C. Sophie turned the paper. Nothing else. Just that. C. Cole. He had put a note in her book. How? When? Sophie looked around her room, suddenly suspicious. Had he been here? Had he broken in? No, Claire would have mentioned it, unless her mother was involved. Sophie covered her face with her hands. I'm losing it, she muttered. Completely losing it. She grabbed her phone and typed a message. Did you break into my house? Sent. 3 seconds later, his reply, technically, your mother let me in. Sophie typed furiously, that is breaking in. It's help. I didn't ask for help. I know. That's why I'm giving it anyway. Sophie threw the phone on the bed, frustrated. Then it pinged again. You have a final presentation in 3 weeks. You'll need help. How do you know that? I have my methods. You are a stalker. I'm a concerned investor in emerging talent. Despite everything, Sophie felt a smile slip out. But then reality hit her. Public presentation. In 3 weeks, in front of business owners, investors, press, and she could barely walk in a straight line. Sophie typed, hands shaking. What if I fail? This time the answer came slower. But when it arrived, it was different. You won't. I won't let you. Sophie stared at the message, read it again, and felt something strange in her chest. Not fear, not anger, something like hope. She set the phone aside and looked at the books, the handwritten note, the impossible pile of work ahead. Then she looked at the desk. Okay, she whispered. You and I are going to spend the next 3 weeks together. So I need you to cooperate. No shaking, no creaking, no collapsing mysteriously in the middle of the night. The desk didn't answer, but Sophie could swear it tilted in a small nod. Or maybe that was just the uneven floor. Either way, she decided to take it as a win, because now she had 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks to prove she wasn't just the girl who talked to objects. 3 weeks to show that Sophie Hart, daughter of Claire, granddaughter of James, deserved to be there. Even if the objects disagreed. And even if Cole Montclair was quietly orchestrating everything behind the scenes like some kind of mysterious, benevolent CEO. Which was annoying and confusing and strangely comforting. Sophie shook her head. She would deal with that later. Right now, she had work to do and a desk to convince to cooperate. One challenge at a time. Sophie had practiced her speech 17 times. 17. In the shower, on the bus, while politely talking to the toaster about not burning the bread. And now, standing in the Montclair mansion garden at 7 in the evening, she had forgotten every word. Because Cole was there, back turned to her, watering plants, wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, no corporate suit, no billionaire armor, just a man, taking care of flowers. Sophie swallowed hard. I need to talk to you, she said, louder than intended. Cole turned, slowly, and when his eyes met hers, there was something there. Surprise, concern? Or had he been waiting for this? Sophie, he turned off the hose. I didn't know you were coming. Lie, she accused. You always know. You have methods. The corner of his mouth lifted, almost a smile. Fair. Sophie took one step forward, then another, her fists tight, her heart beating so loud she was sure he could hear it. Why? She burst out. Why are you doing this for us? Cole did not answer right away. He just looked at her. That look that saw everything, that noticed every detail. Because you need it, he said simply. That is not an answer. Sophie's voice echoed through the garden. Birds flew out of the trees. The silence that followed was heavy. She took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I'm sorry, she murmured. I didn't mean to shout, but you don't understand. You can't just step into someone's life and start paying for everything and arranging doctors and reactivating school records and helping. Cole completed, his voice low. And controlling, Sophie corrected. Because that's what it feels like, as if you decided that I can't take care of my own life, and she took another step, passionate, furious, and stepped right into the flower bed. Her foot sank into the damp soil, her ankle twisted, and Sophie fell to the side, taking half a dozen petunias with her. Ow! Cole was beside her in 2 seconds. Are you okay? No, Sophie shouted from the ground, surrounded by destroyed flowers. I'm not okay. I'm on the ground again, because apparently the universe decided I am the official clown of every place. And then, against all logic, she started crying. Not delicately, not beautifully, but with that ugly, shaking cry that came from months of stored exhaustion. I'm sorry, Petunias, she sobbed. You did not deserve this. Cole knelt next to her, and for the first time, Sophie saw something different on his face. Not pity. Understanding. Sophie, he said gently, you haven't been okay for a long time, have you? The words broke something inside her. No, she whispered. I'm not. I'm exhausted. I'm worn out. I'm talking to objects because I don't have anyone else to vent to. And now you show up out of nowhere and start fixing everything, and I don't know how to deal with that. Why do you have to deal with it alone? Sophie wiped her face with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt on her cheek. Because that's what I've always done, she admitted. My whole life. When my grandfather died, I took care of my mother. When she got sick, I dropped everything to pay for her medicine. I have always managed everything alone. And what if you didn't have to anymore? The words floated in the air between them. Sophie looked at Cole, really looked, at the man who had seen her at her worst moments, who had witnessed the disasters, the conversations with objects, the complete collapse, and who had stayed. Why are you doing this? She asked again, softer now. The truth. No deflecting. Cole sighed and sat on the grass beside her. Your grandfather, he began. James Hart? He worked with my father on humanitarian missions. Sophie nodded. She knew that. He saved my father's life, Cole continued. Twice. Carried him for miles when he was injured in an explosion. Stayed by his side when no one else believed he would survive. Sophie felt something tighten in her throat. I didn't know that. He never told you because he wasn't the kind of man who bragged, Cole said. He just did the right thing. Always, without expecting recognition. That sounds like him, Sophie whispered. My father tried to repay him, Cole said, looking at his own hands. Offered money, help, anything. But James refused. He said it wasn't about debt. It was about love. Sophie closed her eyes, tears slipping silently. And then my father died, Cole continued, his voice lower, without ever being able to repay what he owed. And I found this out 2 weeks ago. I found out that the man who saved my father had a daughter and a granddaughter, and that you were fighting alone. He turned to Sophie, his dark eyes locked on hers. And I couldn't allow that to continue, not because I owe anything, but because it would be wrong, unfair. You should not be carrying all of this alone. Sophie sobbed, a strangled, wet sound. I thought, she began, her voice breaking, I thought there was no way out, that it would always be like this, working until I collapsed, watching my mother get worse, giving up everything. You don't have to anymore, Cole said, firm. Not alone. Sophie covered her face with her hands, crying harder now, not from sadness, but from relief. From finally being seen, from finally not being alone. Cole did not try to hug her, did not try to comfort her. He just stayed there, present, solid, like an anchor. And after a long moment, Sophie lowered her hands and looked at him through her tears. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered. You don't need to thank me. But I want to. Sophie, Cole interrupted gently, you can start by accepting help, truly, without guilt, without feeling like you owe anything. Sophie wiped her face again, leaving another smear of dirt. I don't know if I can, she admitted. Accepting help has always been difficult. I know, Cole said with a small smile. You prefer talking to faucets. Despite everything, Sophie laughed. A messy, wet laugh, but real. Faucets don't judge. I'm not judging either. Sophie looked at him, and for the first time, she believed it. They stayed sitting there for a few more minutes, in the middle of the destroyed flower bed, surrounded by trampled petunias, two human disasters trying to make sense of everything. Then Sophie realized. I destroyed your flowers, she said, horrified. Cole looked around and shrugged. They'll grow back. But Sophie, he looked right at her. Do you really think I care more about flowers than about you finally accepting help? The words caught her off guard, and Sophie felt something different in her chest, something warm, frightening, new. She began. But she couldn't finish. Because suddenly, sitting there in the middle of the garden, covered in dirt, with swollen eyes and surrounded by crushed flowers, Sophie Hart finally felt seen, truly seen. Not as the maid's daughter, not as the girl who talked to objects, not as a charity case, but as a person. Someone who deserved help, someone who deserved kindness, someone who deserved to be there. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Cole smiled, genuine, full. Now, he stood and offered his hand. "Let's get you out of this flower bed before you declare war on the roses, too." Sophie took his hand and let him pull her up. And when she stood, wobbling a little, she looked at the destroyed petunias. "Sorry again," she murmured to them. "You were lovely flowers." Cole laughed. Loud, true. And Sophie, despite everything, smiled too, because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't alone. And the objects, even the petunias, could wait. For now, she had something more important. She had hope. 3 weeks can change an entire life. Sophie discovered that in the most unexpected way possible, waking up on a Saturday morning and realizing her mother was singing in the kitchen. Singing. Claire Hart, who for months could barely get out of bed, was making pancakes and singing an old song from the radio. Sophie stood in the bedroom doorway, wide-eyed, wondering if she was still dreaming. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Claire called, turning with a spatula in hand. "Pancakes in 5 minutes," Sophie blinked. "Mom, you're cooking?" "I am," Claire smiled, a full smile, the kind Sophie hadn't seen in months. "The new treatment is doing wonders. Dr. Patterson said the results are better than expected." Sophie felt something tighten in her throat, but in a good way. Gratitude. "That's amazing." "It is," Claire agreed, turning back to the stove. "And you? First project presentation is on Monday, right?" Sophie's stomach dropped. "Don't remind me." "You'll do great." "I'm going to trip on the stage and take the screen with me." "Sophie Hart," Claire turned, pointing the spatula at her. "You're not gonna trip." Mom, I tripped over the door threshold yesterday. A smooth threshold. I have a record." "Then wear shoes with more grip," Claire joked. "Or glue your feet to the floor. Improvise." Despite her nerves, Sophie laughed. And in that moment, sitting at the table eating pancakes her mother had made, Sophie realized something. Things were changing. For real. Monday arrived far too quickly. Sophie stood in front of the environmental engineering building, holding a folder with her project, having a very serious conversation with the glass door. "Okay," she whispered. "I know we don't get along. I know you enjoy embarrassing me. But not today. Please. Today I need you to behave like a normal door." The door didn't answer. But Sophie was sure it had a skeptical expression. "Great," she muttered. "Even the doors don't believe in me." Talking to objects again? Sophie turned and saw Cole stepping out of a car parked nearby. Dark suit, perfect tie. But his eyes had that amused spark she already knew. "What are you doing here?" Sophie asked, startled. "Moral support," he said, walking toward her. "And making sure you don't run away." "I'm not gonna run." Cole raised an eyebrow. "You were negotiating with a door." "It was a legitimate negotiation," he smiled. Then his expression shifted. "Are you ready?" Sophie looked at the folder, at the building, at Cole. "No," she admitted. "I'm terrified. What if I ruin everything? What if I'm not good enough? What if—" "Sophie," Cole cut in, gentle but firm, "you're brilliant. Your project is exceptional, and you're going to prove that today." "How do you know the project is exceptional?" "You didn't even see it." Cole hesitated. "Just for a second." "I did." Sophie's eyes widened. "You, how?" "I have my methods," he said, repeating his favorite line. "You are a stalker." "I'm an investor interested in emerging talent," he corrected, completely serious. "And Sophie, I want to make you an offer." "Now?" "Now." Cole took an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket and handed it to her. Sophie took it, confused, opened it, and froze. "Internship offer, Corporate Sustainability Department. Montclair Industries candidate Sophie Hart." Sophie read it again, and again. You're offering me an internship?" "Not as a favor," Cole said quickly. "As an investment. Your thesis on water sustainability in urban areas is exactly what my company needs. I want you to lead a pilot project." "Lead?" Sophie almost choked. "I barely finished college." "You're finishing with honors," Cole corrected, "and with ideas that can change entire communities. So yes, lead." Sophie looked at the paper, at Cole, at the building, and felt something different in her chest. Not fear, hope. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Cole replied, simple. "After the presentation, think about it. and give me an answer." Sophie nodded, still processing. And then the glass door opened by itself. Automatic. Sophie looked at it, surprised. "See?" Cole said. "Even the door knows you're going to do great." Despite everything. Sophie smiled and walked in. The presentation was chaotic. Sophie tripped going up on stage, dropped the remote for the screen, and had to apologize to the microphone for bumping into it 3 times. But when she started talking about the project, about clean water, about vulnerable communities, about sustainable solutions, something changed. She transformed. She was no longer the clumsy girl who talked to objects. She was Sophie Hart, environmental engineer, visionary. And when she finished, the auditorium exploded in applause. Rachel was crying with pride in the front row, professors were nodding, impressed, and Cole, discreet in the back of the room, had a smile that said, "I knew it." After the presentation, Sophie went to the conference room where Cole was waiting, reviewing something on the tablet. "So?" he asked when she walked in. "How was it?" "I didn't trip," Sophie announced, triumphant. "Well, I tripped going up, but I didn't fall. That's progress." Cole laughed. "I knew you'd do well." Sophie looked around the room, and then she saw it. The rug. That cursed Persian rug, just like the one that had started everything. She walked toward it, slowly, dramatically, and stopped right in front of it. "You," she pointed, "started this war. But I want you to know, I won. I survived. I won, and now you're going to have to live with that." The rug didn't respond, but Sophie swore it looked defeated. "You made peace with the rug?" Cole asked, amused. "No," Sophie corrected. "I declared victory. That's different." Cole shook his head, smiling, and then Sophie turned toward him, took a deep breath, and said, "I accept." Cole lifted his eyes from the tablet. The internship, the project, everything," she confirmed, "but with one condition." "What condition?" "You stop invading my life without warning," Sophie said, serious but with a touch of humor. "If you're going to help, you tell me. No surprises, no mysteriously paid bills. We work together as partners." Cole considered it for a moment, then extended his hand. "Partners?" Sophie shook his hand, firm, confident, and she felt something shift. It was no longer about debt. It was no longer about charity. It was about 2 people building something new, together. "When do I start?" Sophie asked. "Next week. We'll prepare for the launch event for the charity fund," Cole explained. "It'll be big. Press, investors, the mayor." Sophie's stomach twisted. Big event, with a stage and people watching. "You just presented to a full auditorium. That was an auditorium of students, not investors." "Sophie," Cole looked at her, "you can do it. I know you can." Sophie took a deep breath, and then looked at the rug again. "If I manage to beat you," she told the fabric, "I can do anything." The rug stayed silent, but Sophie decided to take it as agreement. And when she left the conference room, with the internship offer in her hand and her heart lighter than it had been in months, she realized something. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was blooming. And maybe, just maybe, she really could do this, even if the objects disagreed. Especially if the objects disagreed, because Sophie Hart had learned something important. Sometimes you trip. Sometimes you fall. But what matters is getting back up and moving forward, even when Persian rugs conspire against you. Sophie was having a very serious conversation with the bathroom mirror. "Okay," she whispered, adjusting her navy blue dress for the 10th time. "Today is the day we prove I'm not just a collection of walking disasters. So I need you to cooperate. Show my best version. No mysterious stains, no rebellious hair. No," the lipstick slipped from her hand and fell into the sink. "Seriously?" Sophie looked at the lipstick as if it had personally betrayed her. "Not today, please, not today." A knock on the door. "Sophie?" Claire's voice. "Is everything okay in there?" Sophie opened the door and Claire walked in, radiant in a wine-colored dress, her hair pulled into an elegant bun. She looked beautiful, healthy, as if the last months of pain had never existed. "Mom," Sophie whispered, "you look incredible." "So do you," Claire smiled, fixing a strand of her daughter's hair. "But you need to breathe. You're panting like when you used to run from that vacuum cleaner." Even nervous, Sophie laughed. "I'm terrified." "I know, but you're going to shine." Claire held her daughter's face with both hands. "Your grandfather would be so proud." The words caught Sophie off guard. The tears came before she could control them. Hey. Claire gently wiped them with her thumb. "No crying. You'll smudge your makeup." "Sorry," Sophie sniffed. I wish he had seen this, all of it, college, the project. You getting better. He saw it, Claire said firmly. From where he is, I'm sure he saw every step. Sophie nodded, trying to pull herself together. Shall we? Claire held out her hand. We have an event to conquer. Sophie took her mother's hand, took a deep breath, and they walked out together. The Montclair Industries event hall was impressive. Crystal chandeliers, tables decorated with white flowers, a huge stage with a big screen and professional lighting, and people. A lot of people. Businessmen in suits, investors, press, the mayor. Sophie felt her stomach twist. I can't do this, she whispered to her mother. There are too many people. What if I trip? What if I drop something? What if? Sophie Hart. Cole's voice cut through the panic. He looked amazing. Perfect black suit, dark blue tie that matched her dress. She noticed and felt her face warm. Coincidence. It had to be a coincidence. Breathe, he said softly, just for her. You've already done the hard part. Today is just celebration. Celebration, Sophie repeated, as if the word felt strange. With 300 people watching. 307, Cole corrected, with humor in his voice. But who's counting? Despite everything, Sophie smiled. Cole turned to Claire and gave a small bow. Claire, you look beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Montclair, Claire said, but there was real warmth there. For everything. Cole, he corrected gently. Please, I think we're past the point of formalities. And then the music changed. A signal. It was time. Cole offered his arm to Sophie. Ready? Sophie looked at the stage, at the crowd, at the carpet leading to it, the cursed carpet. If I trip, she whispered, do you promise to pretend you didn't see? If you trip, Cole replied seriously, I'll trip with you. Solidarity. Sophie laughed, nervous but genuine, and placed her hand on his arm. Together they began to walk. The room went silent, every head turned. Sophie felt every pair of eyes on her. 1 step, 2 steps, 3. The carpet was right there, red, intimidating, like an old enemy waiting. Sophie looked at it and whispered softly, not today, please, today we make peace. Cole heard it and gently squeezed her arm. They reached the carpet. Sophie took a deep breath and crossed it, step by step. Without tripping, without stumbling, without disasters. And when they reached the other side, when they stepped onto the stage, Sophie felt something extraordinary. Pride, pure, simple, real. She had defeated the carpet. Finally, Cole approached the microphone. The room fell completely silent. Good evening, everyone, he began, his voice steady and clear. Thank you for being here. Today is a special day, a day to honor legacies and to repay old debts. Sophie stood beside him, her hands clasped in front of her, trying not to shake. Many years ago, Cole continued, my father worked alongside an exceptional man. James Hart, a veteran, a humanitarian worker, a man who saved lives without asking for recognition, who helped without expecting anything in return. Sophie's heart began to beat faster. James saved my father's life, twice. Cole paused, letting the words settle. And my father spent years trying to repay him. But James always refused. Because for him, it was not about debt. It was about doing the right thing. The silence in the room was absolute. James Hart passed away 5 years ago, Cole said, his voice lower, leaving behind a daughter, Claire, and a granddaughter, Sophie. Sophie felt the tears rising again. And when I discovered that James's family had been struggling in silence, Cole turned to her, his eyes fixed on hers. I knew I had to do something. Not because I owed it, but because it would be the right thing. He took a deep breath. It is with great pride that I announce today the creation of the James Hart Benevolent Fund, Cole said, his voice echoing through the hall. Dedicated to helping families of veterans and humanitarian workers with medical expenses, so no one ever has to choose between treatment and dignity. The room exploded in applause, but Sophie could barely hear it, because the tears were falling freely now. Cole turned fully toward her. Sophie Hart, he said into the microphone, but he was looking only at her. You honored your grandfather's legacy. You gave up your dreams to care for your mother. You carried a weight no one should carry alone. And today we celebrate not only the past, but your future. He paused. Welcome to Montclair Industries. Officially, as the head of our new Community Sustainability Department, Sophie covered her mouth with both hands, her shoulders shaking, and then she saw it. Claire, in the first row, crying and smiling at the same time. Rachel, a few seats back, cheering silently. And Cole, on the stage beside her, holding out his hand. Sophie took his hand, held it tightly, then she turned to the microphone, wiping her tears with her free hand. Her voice trembled. I don't know what to say. My grandfather always told me that we don't help expecting recognition, we help because it's right. She looked at Cole. And today I understand what he meant, she continued, steadier now. Because Cole Montclair helped me when I didn't ask. When I was falling apart. When I thought there was no way out. And he did it not out of duty, but out of kindness. Sophie took a deep breath. So thank you, she said. For honoring my grandfather, for taking care of my mother, for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. The room exploded in applause again, but Sophie could only see Cole, and the way he was looking at her, as if she were the only person in the room, as if she were extraordinary. When the applause finally faded and people started moving, talking, celebrating, Sophie and Cole stayed on the stage for another moment. You didn't trip, he said quietly. I know. Sophie smiled through her tears. I defeated the rug. You defeated much more than the rug. Sophie looked at him, really looked, at the man who had seen all her disasters, who had heard her talking to objects, who had seen her at her worst, and who had decided she was worth it. Cole, she began, but he shook his head. You don't have to say anything, he said. Today is your day, yours and your mother's. Enjoy it. Sophie nodded. Then impulsively she rose on her toes and kissed his cheek. Quick, soft. But enough, thank you, she whispered, for everything. And when she stepped back, she saw it, the smile on Cole's face, genuine, complete, happy. And Sophie knew. This wasn't the end of the story, it was only the beginning, because she had conquered the rugs, had survived the rebellious objects, had rebuilt her life, and now she had a future ahead of her, with a job she loved, a healthy mother, and a man who believed in her, even when she talked to faucets, especially when she talked to faucets. Sophie Hart had tripped many times, but today she walked with her head held high, and she didn't fall. Not even once. And that, she decided, was the greatest victory of all. And so ends the story of Sophie Hart, the woman who talked to objects, argued with Persian rugs, and won the heart of a billionaire CEO by literally falling into his life. What did you think of Sophie's journey? Were you rooting for her from the very first fall? And what did you think of Cole? Silent hero or benevolent stalker? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We love hearing what you think, what your favorite part was, and whether you also have a complicated relationship with inanimate objects. No judgment here. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Your opinion is very important to us and helps bring more emotional stories like this one. And since you made it this far and witnessed all of Sophie's falls, victories, and faucet conversations, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to get more emotional, fun, twist-filled stories like this one. Because here on the channel, we believe everyone deserves a second chance. That kindness changes lives, and that sometimes the best romances begin with someone spectacularly tripping over a $3,000 rug. See you in the next story. And remember, if you stumble today, maybe it's the universe pushing you in the right direction. Or maybe it's just another rebellious rug. Until next